Good day. In this short clip, I'm going to just show you two methods that are used to encourage a flipped classroom approach in a subject at CPUT. The subject that we're talking about is called Advanced Marketing Finance 4. It's offered at BTECH level and on a part-time basis, which means that one only sees the students for 2 hours a week, and generally you're dealing with large groups of students in excess of 100. The challenge that you face is that it is taken for granted that the student has a large measure of knowledge already, and most of the time that you have is supposed to be spent on application, applying knowledge that they've already acquired into new circumstances. The difficult thing is that you don't have time to cover the knowledge, otherwise you'd get no time to get around to practical. So how does one maybe bridge that? There are two approaches that we use. One is an approach called program-based learning, where we get the students to cover the content themselves, do a range of self-assessments through multiple choice, and we follow that up with a tutorial that actually counts for marks, where they have to prove that they've worked through the work. The second approach we take is to produce a range of videos that we make available to the students on the content or discussing it, which they have to work through before the time, and then when we get to class we do application. We also check that they actually did view the videos by setting the statistics to track, that we can see that each student viewed it. Let me show you what it looks like. If you go into Advanced Marketing Finance as a subject, I think it also starts with the way that you put your subject content together, and in this case we put it per week so that the students know at all time what we're doing, and it always looks pretty much the same, doesn't matter if you go from one week to the next. So if you look at week 1, you would see a study guide, introduction lecture, and to-do. So in this case, let's look at the concept of the program-based learning. There'll be a to-do for the next lecture, and there'll be a document presented to the student, which they can download if they like, but that explains to them what they're supposed to do. Let me just take you, that you can have a look at that. There's a procedure. They need to study and understand. They need to read each question. They need to write down. They need to compare. They need to work through the work, and then check, and if they get more than 80%, then they move on to the next question. So let's look at this document. They'd start reading through, let's say, a bit of content about the listed company, look at the financial statements, about 4 or 5 pages, and there you'd have a whole range of little multiple choice questions with the answers already given, so that they'd be able to check themselves. But once they've finished with that, one would go back, and part of working through that work, you'd give them a specific deadline. In other words, they're covering the content and you're covering application, and that's followed up by a tutorial that you'd give them on each of the aspects that they would also do online that would count for marks. So that's one way you can get them to cover knowledge, and so that frees you up to cover the practical side. The second way, as I mentioned, is doing videos for them. And let's take, for example, on a specific topic, let's say cash flow statement analysis. Here you would do your lecture, you'd present them with all this information, you give it up front so that they have time to work through it, you give them the chapter, you give them reading material. But as far as the lecture side is concerned, before you even move into anything, you create a range of videos. So for example, I created a video here, how to analyze a cash flow statement, and each part of it has got a video that the student can download, and they can pretty much go through and look at the video. They can, make it full screen, and you can see here I'm explaining how it works. So there you can see how one can make use of it. So it's either program-based learning or making a range of videos available to the students so that they can go ahead, work through the content, and so that you can spend your time on application. Thanks.